Okay,
No,
you want me to do it?
it still counts.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. How many of you have ever heard the term follow your heart or you're pulling on my heartstrings? Most people talk about the heart on a daily basis and they don't even realize it. I've spent a lot of time in the past couple of years learning about the heart and how it functions. The heart is a fascinating organ. Heart disease is the #1 cause of death in America. So I think it's really important that people know how the heart works. So all this information that I'm giving you comes from my Anatomy and Physiology book, and I backed up my sources with WebMD and MedicineNet.com. So, just like some basic anatomy of the heart has 4 chambers. Okay, there's the right atrium, the right ventricle, the left atrium, and the left ventricle. The heart also has 4 valves: the tricuspid valve, the pulmonary valve, the mitral valve, and the aortic valve. Now there are 2 veins that bring blood from the rest of the body to the heart, and that's the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. There's also a pulmonary vein that brings blood from the lungs back to the heart, and there's 1 artery that leaves the heart called the aorta. So now that you know kind of like a basic anatomy of the heart, we're going to go through how blood flows through the heart. So the superior and inferior vena cava bring blood, oxygen poor blood, and they dump it into the right atrium. The right atrium contracts, and that sends blood through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. From the right ventricle contracts, sends blood through the pulmonary valve, and it sends it to the lungs where the blood becomes oxygenated. Then pulmonary veins bring blood back to the left atrium. Left atrium contracts, sends blood through the bicuspid valve and into the left ventricle, where the left ventricle contracts and sends blood through the aortic valve to the aorta. From the aorta, blood is sent through the rest of the body. So some common diseases that arise from the heart, there's valvular insufficiency. So what happens with valvular insufficiency is the point of valves in the heart is to prevent backflow. So you could have blood in the right atrium, and the right atrium contracts, it sends blood through the valve, and the valve is supposed to close. In a normal heart, it does. So that when the right ventricle contracts, blood can't go back into the atrium. With valvular insufficiency, you've got a disease of the valve, so the valve doesn't close all the way. And that causes backflow of blood. So when the right ventricle contracts, blood goes back up into the atrium. And that causes the heart to have to work really, really hard to make up for that leaky valve. And so it really weakens the heart, and it causes symptoms like chest pain and shortness of breath. Another problem is atrial fibrillation. And with atrial fibrillation, it causes the atrium up here to randomly contract. And so there could be no heart in the atrium, but it'll still contract, it'll open up that valve, and there's no blood to flow through. So it completely disrupts the flow of things, and it makes the heart work harder to try to get that flow back. And I'm talking about this because a lot of people don't think that AFib is serious. They don't think it's a serious condition, but if you have AFib, your risk of a heart-related death doubles, and your risk of a stroke is increased 5-fold. So it's really serious. So today we've learned about the basic anatomy of the heart, basic blood flow through the heart, and some common diseases that arise from the heart. Heart's an incredible organ. It's the source of life. It can give it or it can take it away. Our heart is really strong, but it's also really fragile and really sensitive. And if one thing goes wrong, it throws everything off, and it can have detrimental effects. So that's why I think it's really important that you guys know how the heart works.
Yeah! Celebration!
Yay! Thank you, guys. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And